up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you my first place Yubel Fiendsmith profile. Now this is pre-recorded, this is before Euros. I took this to my local environment as like one of the first events post Infinite Forbidden, ended up getting first place. I ended up facing a lot of very interesting matchup. Round number 1 was Cyber Dragon, which was quite a bad matchup for them, but also a bad matchup for me, because as soon as they get Clockwork Knight in activation and then special summon down Cyber Dragon, they can then contact fuse the entire board minus a Phantom, but I was able to win that one. The second round was a mirror match, so that was up against Yubel, but the fact of the matter is, my opponent was still playing Super Poly, and they were still playing the Yubel, the Loving Defender, so literally they could Super Poly my entire board without them even needing to put a monster on the board if I had a Yubel monster on the board that wasn't Phantom. So that was really annoying, quite a grindy game, but ultimately I ended up winning that one. Then it was Snake Eyes Fiendsmith, I ended up winning that one as well, and then the final round was Gimmick Puppets, which was quite an interesting one because I'd never faced them before and I hadn't really looked into them. I knew that they FTK'd and I knew a little bit of what they could do, but game 1 I was able to kind of win that one. I built up a very impressive board, they were able to play through it quite nicely, but I was able to kind of hold off the grind, and then game 2 they kind of bricked a little bit and wasn't able to complete the FTK, and then I was able to kind of go back in game, like the second turn and win it from there. I'm also going to show you my side deck now. As a note, because this is pre-recorded, I have changed this a little bit leading into Euros. Obviously, you now passed the North American WCQ and everything else, so there's a couple of things that I'll change, and I'll talk you through them as I show you this profile as well. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. So starting off with the standard, we've got the one Yubel, the one Terra Incarnate, and then a little bit different from what a lot of people play, which is, I completely understand why they're only playing 2 of it. I'm playing Free Spirit. I feel that this is going to be one of my changes that I'm going to make, but the reason I still quite like playing Free is because I like the idea of opening it up and using it as a battle trap, because a lot of people don't really know that effect of Yubel, and that can really cause a lot of issues. Yes, of course, you can recycle it quite nicely. I also like the idea of playing Free for the pure fact that more times than not, you want to leave your Spirit of Yubel in the graveyard, and you don't really want to be spinning it back with your Phantom. Whereas when you're playing Free, if you can get 2 into rotation, you have no issue putting 1 back into the deck. But ultimately, I can see myself cutting it to 2. I just quite like the option of, if I hard open this, and then I hard open another Fiend with 0/0, I can make Phantom of Yubel early doors, and then protect myself from stuff like drawing a lot of birds a little bit earlier on. But the deck has evolved so much now, literally in a short space of time. Like, you look at what we got in Legacy of Destruction when we got the Nightmare Throne. That changed the way that Yubel played. Then we got Phantom, and again it changed how it played slightly again. And now, of course, we've got Fiendsmith, and that completely changes the way that you play this deck. This deck still maintains some of the same elements that it plays, but its combo lines are just so completely different that the Fiendsmith adds so much. Now, I would like to play this deck prior, like before Fiendsmiths, but Fiendsmiths just add so much to the deck that I feel that you're going to be at a massive disadvantage if you don't play them. I'm not saying that it can't be done, because I feel that when you're playing a pure version of Yubel, you still have some edges on the Fiendsmith version when you're able to play stuff like Loving Defender, Super Poly, and everything else. It can really catch a lot of people off guard, but I do feel that the strongest version is with the Fiendsmiths. So I can see myself cutting Spirit down to 2. I'm not too sure what I would sub it in for yet. There's a couple of different options that I'm looking for, whether I'm going to main deck some of my side cards and then add some other cards in and kind of work it back from there. Then one of your best starts of the day is your Samsara D Lotus. This card is just even more important now. The pure fact that Nightmare Throne gets to this card but can also get you to your other engine in the form of the Dark Beckoning Beast is absolutely insane. You've got so much consistency. But you'll actually see that there's a couple of plays you make where you end your board on a Phantom of Yubel and a Yubel, and then you bring the Lotus back from the graveyard and then tribute off your Yubel. In doing so, it still means that your Lotus can have the negate because you control a Yubel monster, but the idea would be is that you activate the Phantom of Yubel's effect first, destroy a spirit in the deck, that then floats you into a Yubel, and then of course you have another negate on the board with the Lotus. So you're pretty much setting yourself up with 2 forms of negate, and then when you do use the Lotus effect to negate and destroy your Yubel, that then gives you the ability to get you into a Terra Incarnate, and then that causes your opponent just as much issues as if you were to have Phantom and everything else. So it just adds a very nice an additional layer that your opponent needs to deal with. One of the other changes that has been made to this deck is playing 2 Grave Squirmers rather than 3. I thought I would miss the 3rd Grave Squirmer, but honestly I feel 2 is more than enough. You do ideally want to be getting this off of your Nightmare Pain. That's the first target you want to be going for. And it does have that niche little bit of ability to special summon it down, pop a Spirit if they've tried to Mourner it, pop a Yubel if they tried to negate it, or even pop a Terra Incarnate if you want to. But In the past version of this, you were playing the blue dog, Shayama, in the deck, and then the idea was that you wanted to hold back your Grey Squirmer such to a late period that when you summoned it down, you would pop one of your cards and use Yama to revive from the graveyard. You now no longer need to even do that or even worry about that, which is why you don't need to worry about playing this at 3 as much, and I feel honestly 2 is perfectly fine for this particular version of the deck, especially when you look at the Fiendsmith. You're adding 5 cards into the main deck already, so my previous build was a 45 card build, so I now needed to find 5 more spaces, so I took 5 cards out to put in the Fiendsmiths, and they've pretty much just upgraded cards directly. So I took out the Shayama, that was upgraded with the Fiendsmith engine, or one of the cards anyway, and then I took out a Grey Squirmer, that then opened up another spot, and then I also took out a Nightmare Pain, and I also took out a Dark Beckoning Beast, which I'll explain when I get to them in a little bit. So carrying on with the Yubel cards, I'm playing the 1 Pain and the 1 Chronicle. Now you can very easily play 2 Pain if you want to. The reason I've decided to go with a 1 and the 1 is because I quite like the alternative options that Chronicle has. Now yes, Chronicle allows you to add back one of your banished cards, which yes, of course it can bring back your Nightmare Pain, which is the idea of it, is that if your opponent Cosmics this, I can use this to bring it back rather than trying to get to my second copy of it. But it also has that ability to bring back a Yubel if you want to. You have the ability to destroy a card on the board, and the best thing about being able to add back one of your banished cards is this can allow you to add back a Tract from the banished zone to your hand, which means you don't need to rely on playing 2 Tract if you don't want to. It can also allow you to bring back any of your other banished cards that you're going to be banishing when we do change this deck up with the TCG exclusive. I believe it's the Aria. This one right here. So when I bring this one into the deck, which is one of the changes that I'm going to make, along with the Neko Quip, spoiler, not playing it, or I am playing it, sorry, spoiler, not playing that guy there, then that's when that's going to be a little bit more reliant for you. It'll give you a couple of different options should you need to, in order to kind of change it up and shake it up. Then the most insane card for the deck is Nightmare Throne. Absolutely love this card. A lot of people forget that you can either add or destroy, and sometimes destroying can be just as important for you because that will let you destroy a spirit and then get you a Yubel to the board. So straight away by activating Nightmare Throne, you set yourself up for a Phantom of Yubel because you'll have a Yubel on the board and then you'll have a spirit in the graveyard. Now ideally you don't want to be going straight into a Phantom of Yubel from that particular play, but the idea is that you'll then be able to have a, let's say, an impermed Dark Beckoning Beast or an impermed Samsara Lotus. You're still going to have that on the board to link them off and go from there. So Throne puts in a huge amount of work, which is why we're also playing the 1 Terraforming. The other 1 power card that we use is just technically acts as a starter is the 1-for-1. The amount of times that I open this up, and then if you do see yourself like a Terra Incarna or you see yourself with a Yubel, you activate 1-for-1, again you get a Samsara Lotus on the board, you activate Samsara, and if they decide to ash the Samsara because they were like, oh, let's get that in rotation, you then still have your materials set up for your Phantom of Yubel, and you haven't even conducted your normal summon. Or if you do use your normal summon on the Dark Beckoning Beast and they imperm it, but you've opened up a 1-for-1, you still get pretty much the exact same outcome that you needed to. So I think this card's just incredibly powerful for the deck. Again, I understand if people didn't want to play it, but for me personally, it has put in a lot of work for me, which is why I still kind of like using it. Again, if I wanted to cut the deck down for anything less so, yes, I could see myself cutting it out. But honestly, I think it puts in more than enough work for me, which is why I really wanted to keep it around. And then for the Dark Beckoning engine, I've gone with 1 Dark Beckoning, 1 Chaos Summoning Beast. I know straight away, a lot of people are going to be like, why have you cut this to 1? I did have it at 3. Then obviously you would cut 1 out naturally for the Chaos Summoning Beast. And then I ultimately needed to find that little bit of space. And I was like, okay, well, I don't mind cutting the Dark Beckoning Beast because the way that I looked at it in my previous build, I've swapped 1 Dark Beckoning Beast for a Chaos Summoning Beast. And then I swapped the other Dark Beckoning Beast for the 3rd Opening of Spirit Gates. Now I know there's a lot of people watching this that are going to be like, finally, he's decided to play 3 Opening of Spirit Gates. Well, yes, finally, in my opinion, it is now worth playing 3 Opening of Spirit Gates, because in the past, just an Opening of Spirit Gates on its own didn't do anything. Whereas now, an Opening of Spirit Gates on its own gets you full Fiendsmith combo, and then when you include the TCG exclusives, it now becomes a little bit more consistent without needing to Fiendlock you. Keep in mind, I was building this without the idea, like I knew the TCG exclusive existed, but with a couple of options in my side deck, I still wanted to use Beatrice. And I feel when you're using the TCG exclusives, you make that decision to not play Beatrice. So I was kind of like in the mindset of, all right, well, let me see how abusive I can get of the Beatrice card to see what I can benefit from it. And then ultimately when Beatrice gets banned, which is what I expect it to do, I can then shake it up and go for the TCG exclusives. However, obviously more and more testing I've played around with it, I've noticed that the TCG exclusives are probably a little bit better to be playing, and the loss of what the generic options that Beatrice gave me, I feel is worth the sacrifice to put either Beatrice to the side deck or just not play it at all. Then for the Unchained cards, I'm only playing the one Shavara and the one Abominable Chamber. I did bounce back and forth with Escape, but Escape is more for the OCG kind of builds that play this. I was like, well, am I ever really putting Rage in the graveyard? And I was like, okay, let's test and test and test and test. And the more I tested, the more I realized that, you know what, I actually don't mind putting Rage in the graveyard. Because I've adapted this build and there is no space in the extra deck for the Princess line, I liked having Rage in the graveyard to then revive it. And I also like the idea that you use Shavara to pop your own Rage so that you add a card back from your graveyard, so you've got recurrence should you need to when it goes into the next turn. And then you still have that ability to bring the Rage back off the back of the chamber. You just don't have that as link material. And then moving on to the brand new main deck meta engine is the Fiendsmith engine. So purely because of Euros, I had to pick this up. I was like, you know what? If it was only for Yubel, then maybe not so, but I was like, I'm going to play this in Muskets, which I really enjoy. I'm going to play it in Dark Worlds, and I'm definitely going to play it in Yubel. So to me, being able to pick these up early before the hype came out post North American WCQ was worth it for me. And it is just, like, this engine shouldn't exist. It shouldn't be as broken as it is. Like, this engine does so much. It offers burn damage, it offers negates, it offers way to eat out loads of hand traps. Like, it's just absolutely insane. But unfortunately, it's a secret. It's a must-have engine if you want to be playing this deck to its highest competitive level. The one tracked, and then of course the one lorry, pretty straightforward and simple on these ones. And then my next lineup, I played like nearly 15 to 20 hand traps and anti-hand traps, but obviously I went with triple Ash Blossom, pretty standard on that one. I main deck 2 Droll, like this puts in a lot of work, and then I also felt, because I'm main decking Crossout, that I could use Droll as a target as well, but I'm considering whether I want this at 3. I feel that most decks right now, though, have the ability with the right hand to play through Droll and play around Droll. So I don't think it's an absolute necessity at 3. Like, prior to this weekend and prior to watching the North American WCQ, I was like, all right, Droll is a mandatory 3 of. But now it's like, okay, well, I can see decks can play through it, so it's not always an auto win if you drop it, unlike something like D-Shifter. I then played a couple of one-offs in the main deck, so the one Nibiru and the one Effect Veiler. This was purely for my local environment. I was like, okay, well, if I do hard open the Nibiru, great. I feel a lot of decks will struggle to play against this. I was worried about Ritual Beast being at the local environment, and I knew Nibiru would put in a lot of work for it. That's why I've got Nibiru in the side deck as well. But again, this just kind of comes down to whether you want to main it or not. I wanted the idea of having Veiler in here because I knew that a lot of people were on the Veiler. Whether I'm going to play Veiler at 2 or not, I still haven't fully decided. But it was just having it as a cross-out target, but also if I did hard open it, it was a good hand trap to interact with my opponent. Then of course we've got triple Infinite Impermanence, pretty standard on that one. And then triple Crossout Designator to deal with all of the hand traps plus the Infinite Impermanence. But this also put in a bit of work because it actually did hit a opponent's triple tactic talents, which is quite important as well. 1 Call by the Grave, and then of course 2 triple tactics talents. So the 2 talents was something that I changed from my previous build. Like in my previous build, I was playing 1 additional Crow, and I was playing a second Veiler. And I was like, okay, well, let's take them out and let's go for more punishing cards and cards that will help me go second. So I decided to main deck the talents instead. I'm still in that grey area of, do I want these to become Bestials? Do I want them to become DD Crows? It really is up to you what you decide to put in this space. This is just something that I was playing around with. I like the idea that, obviously from my previous build, another space that I'd taken out to fit in the Fiendsmith was, of course, Pot of Prosperity. Like, you just can't play Pot of Prosperity in this build because your extra deck is so tight. Yes, you recycle the cards, but you're not going to be recycling them much when you banish them face down. So it was obviously a sacrifice I was willing to make, and I didn't feel like I really missed it most times. Like, more times than not, what you've got to kind of keep in mind is my route to my starters is probably more so now, because you would look at always playing 3 Samsara D Lotus, always playing 3 accesses of Nightmare Throne, plus the Terraforming, so that's 7 routes to starters already, plus your Dark Beckoning Beast and your less so your Chaos Summoning Beast. But you'd have your Dark Beckoning Beast, which I did previously play at 3, but I only played 2 gates, so I was playing 5 more additional ways to get to my starter. Now I'm playing 3 gates and 1 Dark Beckoning, so I've cut my starter down by 1 in that particular overall count. But then if we're adding everything up, you've got the 4 of that one, you've got your 4 of your Dark Beckoning Beast, so 8 already, plus the 3 of your Samsara D Lotus, so that's 11, and then you can start counting your 3 Fiendsmith, going you up to 14, plus the Tract, which is a 15-card Searchlight starter, and that's where the TCG exclusives come into play, because that's when the Tract becomes a 1-card combo, whereas with the Fiendsmith itself, it is a 1-card combo, but Tract does need you to have that additional monster in order to complete the play you need to, unless you are using the TCG exclusives in the Neko Quit Princess, and of course, more so the Aerial Eater. So that's it for the entire main deck. I'm now going to show you my extra deck, and then I'll show you the side deck, and I'll talk about cards that I was subbing in, cards that I was subbing out, and everything else in between. So we've gone with 2 Phantom of Yubel. I did play around with playing 3 of this. I think prior to the Fiendsmith, you were playing 3 of this, or you could very easily play 3 of this, just because you were using one as a combo starter. And then if your opponent like did trigger this during your turn, you'd still make a second one anyway, and you'd need to recycle it. Now, there are ways to recycle it. You would recycle it with your Nightmare Throne, and I feel with 2, you kind of have to rely on it a little bit more. But previously, before the Fiendsmith, you were using this to bait out hand traps, whereas now the Fiendsmith engine kind of does that job for you, which is why you have that ability to play this at 2 rather than needing to rely on 3. But I wouldn't be opposed. If you've got 3 and you still want to play 3, by all means do so. That I don't think that's a massively bad thing. I just feel that, like, at the end of the day, if you're like, well, I can only afford the Fiends, I've got 3 Phantoms and I can only afford 1 Fiendsmith, or like I can't even afford the Fiendsmith, then you'd probably just be like, yeah, okay, absolutely fine. I'm just going to stick with this as it is. Just got a dent on the sleeve. I was just checking it was a sleeve and not the card. Yeah, so 2 Phantom of Yubel, perfectly fine. Love this card. Such a great addition to the deck. Then for the Unchained, you've got your 1 Yama and the 1 Rage. Obviously, you can see that I've taken out the Anguish now. Again, your extra is just so tight. Like, all of this is pretty the standard. Like your SP Little Knight, Appaloosa, you make this off of the Fiendsmith engine, but it kind of has that bridge between the Fiendsmith and the Yubel engine as well. Muckraker, this is a card that a lot of people, or some people, are cutting, and that's where you fit in the space for this guy. And the reason you do that is the Muckraker, sorry, with Beatrice is your combo route. Your combo route to use your Dark Beckoning Beast to get you into your Samsara D Lotus, however you do Fiendlock yourself. Whereas the Aerial, when you take out your Muckraker and you take out your Beatrice, the Aerial actually gives you access to your Lotus without needing to Fiendlock yourself. So that's kind of why people are choosing to sacrifice the Muckraker. I'm not 100% set on it yet. I still need to do a bit more testing if I feel that Muckraker is not needed. But there was a couple of times over this weekend that it did put in a lot of work. And then the Fiendsmith engine, Moon of the Close Heavens, like, I'm not too fussed that this is a common, because I would not be surprised if Konami went, okay, emergency ban list, we're going to nuke Snake Eyes, and just to kind of put the Fiendsmiths in check a little bit, we're going to get rid of Moon of the Closed World. And then people can't really have much of an argument, because you can still play Fiendsmith, Fiendsmith still have support coming out, but the Moon of the Closed World stops it being as generically splashable. It is literally open up the Fiendsmith, otherwise you're not going to the combo, whereas this is basically like a Verti Anaconda of get 2 effect monsters and you can have full Fiendsmith combo. The 1 Requiem, you're literally using it to tribute, but a lot of people forget that it has the graveyard effect to equip it to your Engraver, and then you use Engraver's effect to target this and target one of your opponent's monsters and then send them to the graveyard. So really, really kind of cool. Sequence, this card's mental. Like, this card is how you can also fuse into this, but in this particular version we were using it to go into Lacrima. Lacrima gave you the ability to trigger off a card that you would send with your Beatrice, but it also gave that ability to burn your opponent if you got into a time situation, which I only ever got into a time situation once, and I didn't need this to win the duel. We only got called into time once, but by that point there was enough battle damage done. But the card that I do like making the most of the sequence is the Desiree. Now, I feel like a lot of people aren't playing this. I initially, at my first kind of version of this deck, I wasn't playing it, but it's just so incredibly important. The fact that it doesn't need to, like, it's not, it's a non-target to negate is absolutely insane. So if this card is Centigrade, you get to shuffle one of a Light Fiend monster from your graveyard into the deck or extra deck, then target a card in the field and send it to the graveyard. However, it has a quick effect to negate the effects of a number of face-up cards on the field equal to the total number of link ratings equipped to this card. So you'll be linking this with 2. What that gives you the ability for, especially when you've got the Chamber in play, is Chamber lets you activate the Chamber. If your opponent activates like Dark Ruler or Droplet and doesn't send a trap card, you activate the Chamber, and then you can go chaining to Desiree because you're not responding directly to Dark Ruler no more, and Desiree can negate the Dark Ruler no more, which is really cool. One thing that this deck lacked was having multiple Omni Negates, and that's what the Desiree gives you. So there was times where they would bait out the Veratus, and then they would go, okay, so for example, bait out the Veratus with like a Harpy's Featherstorm, and you're like, Harpy's Duster, sorry. And you're like, negate, I want to keep my back row. And then it'll just hit you with a Lightning Storm. Whereas now you have the option of setting up a Desiree, plus your Phantom, plus sometimes even a the Rage coming back from the graveyard into an SP, alongside an Appaloosa. So what you're doing is you're splitting your negations between your Desiree, your Veratus. So Desiree and Veratus deal with your opponent's spells and traps. Your Phantom and your Appaloosa deal with their monster effects. And then your Rage into SP just deal with cards you don't want floating around. So the one Veratus, you don't make this as easily, well, you can make it as easily, but you don't make it as consistently as the rest, because sometimes you'll be in a position where it's like, okay, do I want Appaloosa or Veratus? Do I want to leave my Yubel on the board with a Phantom to get back the Lotus negation instead of the Veratus? Obviously, more times than not, if you can make this, you will go for it, and that's why I quite like the idea of using the Neko Quip and the Aerial Eater more consistently, for the pure fact that this would allow me to... it means that I don't fiend lock myself, so I could actually be openly making Veratus a lot easier rather than fiend locking myself with Yubel. Sorry, not Yubel, Muckraker. And then for the final two cards, we've got the one DDD Wave Hiking Caesar and the one Beatrice Lady of Eternal. Wave Hiking, you're either making one or the other with these, more times than not. But the reason I went with Beatrice, and as a bit of a preview for the extra deck, is for the extra deck I was playing 3 power cards to be utilised off of Beatrice. Obviously I was using the old combo that this sent Lotus, and then you'd use Muckraker to fiend lock yourself, bring back the Lotus, and then go full Yubel combo. But the reason that I really kept Beatrice in here is because I had the option of using Angel of Blue Tears. You would use Beatrice's effect, send the Angel of Blue Tears, detaching the Lacrima. Lacrima's effect will trigger, burning your opponent for 1200. You would then trigger the Angel of Blue Tears, which would let you set a normal trap card from the deck. And the card that I was choosing to set would either be the different dimension ground, or it could also set you a D barrier. I personally went with different dimension ground, because if the only reason I would be using D barrier would be in the branded matchup or in the Tempai matchup. And the only matchup that I felt I was going to play at my locals would be the Tempai over the branded. So the other normal trap card that I went with was the Rise to Full Heights. And the reason I went with this is because I could choose not to put in Angel, like I would either put in Angel and Blue Tears and DDG, or I would just put in the Rise to Full Heights, use Beatrice to send this, and then what this does is your ideal target is you would banish this to target your Rage, meaning your opponent would only be allowed to target the Rage or attack the Rage for that entire turn. And then when you use Rage's effect to link off, that's it, Rage is no longer on the board, and it means they can no longer attack. So it kind of like stalled out an OTK, which is really kind of helpful. Obviously, Rage isn't the best example in the Tempai matchup, because if they get the field spell, then you can't Rage to link off anyway. But you can pretty much just target anything you want, and then they can only attack it. And if you've got like a Yubel in defense, and they're like, okay, well, I can only attack Yubel, that's it. It's not getting destroyed by battle, nothing's happening. And even if they negate its effect and do destroy it with battle, you float, and then they can't continue to attack anymore. So I really do like the Rise to Full Heights. I just feel that these 3 cards are kind of tied to Beatrice, and that's why I would want to either side in Beatrice, Angel, DDG, and Rise to Full Heights, and definitely play the Neko Quip, or you would get rid of Beatrice and the Muckraker, and you'd play Neko Quip and the Aerial. So this is the little conundrum that I'm in at the moment, is I wanted to try this out. I also wanted to try out Chain Disappearance for the Snake Eyes matchup, but I was like, this really just doesn't work. It was just more like a gimmicky option, because the idea is that I would use Angel Blue Tears, set this card, activate this. This would then get rid of all the copies of Ash in their deck, but then they just go, okay, cool, Oak. So I was like, yeah, all right, that's not going to be that effective for me. So that's it for the entire extra deck. Moving on to the side deck. So obviously, just because I've already shown you these, you've got the Angel Blue Tears with your 2 targets. Obviously, more so the one target, the DDG, and then Rise to Full Height as another option. For back row hate, I went with Cosmic Cyclone. I decided not to play Evening Match and decided not to play Lightning Storm, because it did clash with another card in my extra side deck that I'll show you in a little bit. Free Skill Drain, never put it in, but it's one of them ones that, again, me and Kyron are talking back and forth about this one, and whether you actually still need it or not. Like, there's loads of different options you can start putting into this extra deck if you wanted to. Like, you could put in the Molchummy Perulia, which has got a lot of hype now post North American WCQ, because a lot of people were playing it. So it's something you can consider. There's obviously other hand traps. Like I said, I wanted to consider DD Crow, but I felt most people ended up switching onto Bestials. I wanted to consider the 3rd Drone Lotbird, and I wanted to consider the 3rd Nibiru. So, like, to me, I could get rid of all the skill drains. I could go to Judgments. I could go for a 2nd and 3rd Nibiru. I could go for a 3rd Droll, and then I can go for a DD Crow, but it really is up to you. I only went with 2 Bestials just purely for space, but honestly, I feel that I could probably find a bit of flex spots to find either the 3rd Bestial or a DD Crow, and I quite like the idea of a DD Crow rather than the 3rd Bestial. Yes, the 3rd Bestial in... it's completely escaped me the name of it. Bulldrake, that's the one. The 3rd Bestial could be really kind of a cool option. But honestly, I like the versatility that DD Crow has, because DD Crow lets you target anything. Like, you can get rid of a Promethean Princess, you can get rid of a Chaos Argent rank up force. Like, it just gives you a bit more versatility than the Bestials, and with DD Crow, you can still target all of the Bestials. The only difference is that if you see Magnemute, you get a search of a Druid Swarm, and you've got that free body on the board. And then if you see the Druid Swarm, you've got a free body on the board, and the threat that if they send it or get rid of it, then you send one of their cards. And the last card I was playing was Phantasme. I really rate this card. I've been on this card for quite a while now with Yubel. I just love the fact, like, a lot of people see it as an alternative to the Mole Chummy, which is absolutely fine, because you can Phantasme under Mole Chummy, but you can't Mole Chummy under Phantasme because you control a card. But what I really liked about the Phantasme is it summons itself, it replaces itself, and then it literally puts some of your bricks back into the deck. But if that wasn't enough, also having this on the board straight away is great for the mirror match, because it shuts off Rage, it shuts off SP Little Knight, it shuts off Imperm. It really does cause your opponent a lot of issues that a lot of people forget about. So sitting on the Phantasme, not only do you have an additional monster on the board to help you get into your the Fiendsmith combo, but you also have a card on there that at any moment can help you protect from a particular targeted effect. Like if they Imperm you and you've got a cross out and you're like, oh, I'd rather save the cross out, then you can just Phantasme it. If they try to Rage your board, one of your monsters, you go, okay, cool, Phantasme. And they're like, oh, wait, it can do that? And if they try an SP, you go, Phantasme. And they go, oh, wait, it can do that too? And you're like, yeah, Phantasme can put in quite a lot of work. And a lot of people forget about it. So I'm highly considering actually tweaking this and putting it in the main deck, but I just don't know where the space would be. And again, the reason this is so consistent is because I think that higher level events, 99% of the players you're going to be facing will be on the Fiendsmith engine, especially when you're at the higher end of the tables. Like literally, you look at the American WCQ, North American WCQ the other day, and I think it was something like all of the top decks were playing, like -1 or 2 were playing Fiendsmiths, which means they're definitely going to be going through one Link monster at least, because you'd go Requiem and you can go, okay, cool, summon down Phantasme, they go into Heavenly Goddess, Phantasme, they go Sequence, Phantasme. And it's very rare that they actually have anything on the board to clear off your Phantasme when you make it. The only thing that you open yourself up to is like a Thrust or a Talents, and it's like, okay, well, by that point, if you want to waste your Thrust or your Talents to try and take this off me, then sure, go for it. But I've refreshed my hands, and there's nothing to say that my hand has been refreshed into something better. The only thing that this will clash with will be an Imperm, and then that's why my side deck is selected the way that it is for the pure fact that any of these cards I draw off the back of the Phantasme, like the Bestials can still be used under Phantasme, DD Crow can still be used, Nibiru can still be used. The idea is that, yes, of course, you can do the exact same with the Mole Chummy, but the Mole Chummy has to be activated while you control no cards. So this has to be opened up turn 1 or no bueno. Whereas with Phantasme, it's like, if I top deck this for turn, I can still guarantee my opponent's probably going to go into a Link monster during the next turn. They even summon out a Princess during my turn. I go, okay, cool, Phantasme. Refresh my hand a little bit. It gives me another form of interruption. It gives me a 2400 boss monster that can beat into some of my opponent's monsters, and it does cause them a lot of issues. So I really rate Phantasme, and I think it does put in a lot of work, and I feel a lot of people undervalue it, but that's just my personal preference. Like, I've seen a couple of different of the deck list now post North American WCQ. I do like what they kind of brought to it. And like I said, I've already made changes to this particular list. I just wanted to show you it as a fair reflection of what I took to locals, and then kind of work it back from there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please put them in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you, as always. I will probably be taking this to Euros. I don't know when this video is going to come out. I'm probably going to delay it a little bit so that it comes out while Euros is already in full swing. I didn't really want to give anything away of what I was playing, just in case. But yeah, this deck's been incredibly fun for me. I really have enjoyed it, and I do like its power play. And I think the Fiendsmith has given it a very nice additional level to it as well. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Do like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.